Thank you so much, everybody. I'm so pleased to be here. I'm so glad this happened. It's quite a story from when I began in Parliament in 2015 to the point where the Prime Minister has decided to not only come to Hamilton, which he has a few times already, but to bring along our other special guest, the President of the Republic of Croatia. I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues tonight. Minister Filomena Tassi is here. Filomena, where are you? What a crowd. There you are. And from Hamilton, West Ancaster, Dundas, and we have Boris Rushnevsky, Boris from Etobicoke South, who is a great friend of the Croatian people, and a proud Ukrainian. He always wants me to mention that. And Marlon Tabara from Kitchener South. Marlon, where are you? Thank you for joining us here. Where's my mayor friend, Barry Grabar-Kitarović? Way in the back over there. Barry. When I left as mayor of Hamilton, we had to have another Croatian mayor, so Barry stepped in Kitchener, and that all worked out so well. You know, ladies and gentlemen, this is such a great night for all of us, because in the crowd, Madam President and Mr. Prime Minister, is really a vast, diverse group of people, because we have some of what we call the Columbusati, the old-timers who came, you know, like my grandfather and many of our grandfathers in 1913. Robert Borden was the Prime Minister. And then in the 20s, my father came in the 50s, and then people who've come in very recently in the last 10 years as a result of issues in the old country. But we, all of us, no matter when we came, have Croatia in our hearts, whether we were born here or our dads and moms. And you know, I remember sitting on the stage of the old Croatian hall listening to my dad play his tambura, and it's the culture that knitted us together through all the hard times and all the worries that we've had. But now we have a joyous celebration tonight. And the reason we're celebrating is that Ambassador Matković and myself, the Croatian ambassador to Canada, have been working for some time. A lot of things had to fall into place, and one of them was earlier visits from the Prime Minister who came to the Winona Peach Festival, where we've had 2 Croatian Winona Peach princesses, and recently, and it was a brilliant day, and the Prime Minister really enjoyed himself. But subsequently, we were able to have the official state visit, and then the extra visit that we're having very special here tonight. And the man we have to thank is the Prime Minister of Canada. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you now the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau.
Dobar dan. Bonsoir, mes amis. Thank you for that kind introduction, Bob, and for all your leadership in putting together this wonderful community event. Bob Bratina not only works incredibly hard on behalf of folks in Hamilton East Stony Creek as MP, but he's also an outstanding representative of the Croatian and Canadian community. Thank you, Bob, for everything you do. My friends, it's extraordinarily wonderful for me to be here tonight at the Croatian Sports and Community Center as we welcome a very special guest, President Grabar-Kitarović. It is such an incredible pleasure to host you on your first official visit to Canada, Madam President, along, obviously, with Mr. Kitarović. Kolinda, Yakov, it's just wonderful to see you here tonight. Thank you so much for being here. I have to tell you, I've lived in Ottawa a couple of times in my life, once when I was a kid, once more recently. And one of the things I always loved about Ottawa, and I've always loved geography, I even studied it at the graduate level briefly in university. But I loved when all of a sudden I'd be walking down the street and I noticed there were flags lining the streets of a country in visiting, and I imagined, you know, who was visiting. It was all so exciting to me to see this celebration of friendship visible in the streets of Ottawa with the flags lining the streets. But I know, as much as I love seeing these flags, whenever I'd meet someone from the community that was being celebrated, or a diplomat seeing their own flag being lining the streets, well, that was something really, really special. So I can only imagine that 20 years ago, a young diplomat walking along the streets of Ottawa, seeing perhaps a series of flags from a country visiting, might wonder, when would my country's flag be flying along the streets of Ottawa? When would we see the GERB lining the streets of Ottawa? And I can only imagine how extraordinary it must feel to know that the very first time the Croatian flag lines the streets of Ottawa, our nation's capital, in celebration of the Croatian-Canadian friendship, would be for that young diplomat's first state visit to Canada 20 years later. It is so wonderful to have you here, Kolinda. This visit marks a very important moment for this community and for the friendship between Croatia and Canada. The very first state visit of a president since Croatia's independence. It's wonderful that we can celebrate this historic event with so many of the people who bring our countries so much closer together every single day. Because just like MP Bratina and my good friend Mayor Grabar-Kitarović, who's here today, Croatian Canadians across the country celebrate their heritage with pride. Your contributions and achievements make Canada a better place. Whether it's as leaders in business like the CIBC President and CEO Victor Dodig, and international music sensations like Michael Bublé, or of course, greats of the sporting world, like the Honorable Frank Mahavlich, who was also a friend of mine and a great senator, or of course, the extraordinary boxer who's here tonight with us, George Chuvalo. Of course, Canada and Croatia have always had a close relationship. In fact, we were one of the very first countries to recognize Croatia's independence. Au fil des ans, nos relations n'ont fait que grandir. Aujourd'hui, je suis fier de travailler en partenariat avec la présidente pour aider nos concitoyens à prospérer et à encourager une croissance économique qui profite à tous. On a qu'à penser à l'accord économique et commercial global qui a été conclu entre le Canada et l'Union européenne. Cet accord progressiste crée déjà de bons emplois pour la classe moyenne et de nouvelles opportunités pour nos entreprises. Indeed, in the very first year since the provisional application of CETA, Canadian exports to Croatia increased by almost 500%. But of course, we need to work on the other side and make sure that the Croatian-Canadian community continues to find in high demand, along with all Canadians, the great products that Croatia has to offer us. I know you know this very well, but none of you have to choose between being proud Canadians and proud Croatians. And that is something that works all around the country and all around the world, where we know that in Canada identities layer onto each other, that we keep our pride with our roots even as we celebrate every day the country we contribute to and build all the time. But that connection to where we were born, or our parents were born, or our grandparents were born, remains part of our identity. But of all the different countries out there, I know that it's especially easy to be both Croatian and Canadian, because the values of our two countries line up so very well. And as we look towards creating even better ties and opportunities and prosperity between our two countries, I know this community will always be at the very heart of that. So thank you. And as our businesses are creating joint success and new middle-class jobs, and our citizens share their heritage with pride, our soldiers have served shoulder to shoulder alongside each other everywhere from Afghanistan to Kosovo. Kosovo, and their allies in NATO's enhanced forward presence. In fact, the HMCS Toronto is scheduled to be making a stop in Split exactly at the same time President Grabar-Kitarović is here in Canada with us. And I also have to say, because of the alphabet, Canada and Croatia sit next to each other at NATO, and that is where I have gotten the chance to get to know Kolinda as we put forward our vision for stronger alliances and a more peaceful world in which countries like Canada and Croatia continue to step up and stand and share these values of which we are all so proud. It's wonderful that we agree on so many things. Qu'il soit question de faire avancer l'égalité des sexes ou de lutter contre les changements climatiques, lorsqu'on travaille ensemble, notre partenariat améliore la vie des gens. Je sais que le Canada pourra toujours compter sur la Croatie en tant qu'allié de confiance et ami proche, just like Croatia will always be able to count on Canada for our steadfast friendship and our support. Just like the people in this room make our country more vibrant, this friendship makes our shared future even brighter. So thank you, Madam President, for being here today. It is so wonderful to welcome you to Canada.
So the reason I wanted to introduce the President, who you well know, and she's ready to greet you. One of the comments that the Prime Minister made about the trade and all the increased trade, I partnered, when I was the mayor, with a developer named Bratina, and Darko is building hundreds of millions of dollars of buildings in our city right now. So there's two Croatians who did pretty good. And the now that CETA has dropped the tariffs, Darko is getting a lot of his cabinetry made in Croatia. I believe he has 30 people working there now, and another 10 working here so they reassemble all the things. So this is a real vibrant, lively relationship between Hamilton and Canada and Croatia, and it is my deep honor for Croatians and for Canadian Croatians. This is one of the greatest nights of our lives. And to have these two people here, especially our President, after we sat out in those tents watching Croatia play France. And we saw how wonderful, the world was mesmerized, not only by our great play and Modric's great play, but by our President, because she was wonderful. And here she is. Would you welcome now the President of the Republic of Croatia, Kolinda, Grabar-Kitarović.
Much for this wonderful introduction, and thank you very much, dear Prime Minister, dear Justin, for being here with us tonight. And I've got to tell you, as that game is concerned, Croatia did not win the gold, but we won the hearts of the world, and that's more important. So, my dear fellow Croatians, drage Hrvatice I Hrvati, our dear Canadian friends, first of all, it's an immense honor for me to be here with you tonight. And as somebody who was a young diplomat, as Justin was talking about, who was walking the streets of Ottawa, 97 to 2000, yearning for the Croatian flag to be there, I cannot tell you how immensely grateful I am to all of you, the Croatian community in Canada, and of course the Croatian Homeland War Defenders, for making it possible. Because without them, without you, I wouldn't be here. It's not about an individual, it's about the country, it's about the nation, it's about being together, it's about what I call zajedništvo. So, Justin, I have to tell you that the Croatian community here in Canada has waited for 28 years for the state visit to happen. And I do express my gratitude again on their behalf and on my own behalf. And I think that they themselves will tell you how much this means to them. I've been hearing stories for the past 2 days of what they were doing back in the early 90s in fighting for our right for existence and for our right to have our own state. I sort of transported myself back in time, and I listened to the same stories that I heard in the 90s, how people were walking around the parliament, protesting, asking for Croatia to be recognized, and now the same Croatian flag is waving just right there in front of the Canadian Parliament on Wellington Street. And for me, this is a deeply emotional moment. I know that not a lot of people appreciate emotions, but I think that emotions are what makes us human, and that emotions are one of the traits of the new leadership as well. So I have to tell you also that in lieu of that, the Croatian community has donated 65,000 Canadian dollars to Tribute to Liberty, to build a monument to the victims of communism in Ottawa. In Croatia, Croatia itself, ourselves, have also donated 25,000 Canadian dollars. It might seem like a small sum, but it means the world to us. And on behalf of the Croatian community and Croatia, I thank you again for the space of freedom and opportunity that Canada has provided to Croatians throughout the years from the 19th century on to be able to live not only decent lives, but to be able to assist Croatia on our way to freedom and liberty, and I hope prosperity as well. I also have to say that, you know, what I mentioned so many times yesterday, when Jakov and I were here from 97 to 2000, we traveled all over Canada by car, from coast to coast to coast, and I was just fascinated by the beauty of this magnificent country. But I also have to tell you that wherever we went, be it some small place in Manitoba or in Saskatchewan or anywhere else, we would meet Croatians. There's a funny story. Jakov and I always wanted to go see the migration of the polar bears in Churchill, Manitoba. We unfortunately never made it, but when we made inquiries, there was one single hotel, and guess who it was owned by? A Croatian guy. So this is what really makes this country great. So, seeing so many communities, and looking at this beautiful country that I have come to love as you, as Croats here in Canada. I have to say though that Croatia's 1,246 islands fade in comparison to Canada's 30,000 islands. But I'm sorry to say so, Justin. Again, we had a beauty contest. As I always say, it's not about the size of geography. It's not about the number of people. It's about ideas. It's about heart. It's about enthusiasm. It's about working together. It's about people. So when it comes to the Croatian community around the world, you all know that my practical corner of the world is one of the pillars of my presidency, and it will continue to be so, because there is an entire Croatia scattered throughout the world, and we need to take care of our people. particularly attached to you Croatian Canadians who originate from Croatia, and Croats' second homeland, Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well. And in my conversation with Justin, I've also asked him that the Canadian government pay more attention to Bosnia and Herzegovina and get more involved, because you are a member of the Peace Implementation Council, and all we want is for the rights of the nations to be respected. And I believe so I've lived among you, and I have the fondest memories of my life in Canada. And today we had a wonderful meeting with some Canadian, Croatian, but also American and Canadian business people and CEOs in Toronto. And actually, I have to tell you, I was quite pleasantly surprised. I thought I was going to hear more criticism about doing business in Croatia, but apparently it's getting much better. So Croatia is open to business. And I do invite Canada to use the opportunity of CETA and the fact that Croatia was the third country to ratify the CETA, to send that delegation to Croatia and to other countries, and to improve our economic relationship and investment both ways, from Canada to Croatia and from Croatia to Canada. And I also have to tell you that today, an amazing woman whom we've all known for such a long time, Hazel McCallion, the beloved mayor of Mississauga for 36 years. She came there, and you know what she said about you, Croatian Canadians? She said they're fiercely Croatian and proudly Canadian. She said that you, the Croatian community, have done an immense job to build the great city of Mississauga, and she's so grateful to you. And what I have to say tonight, speaking from the bottom of my heart, I am fiercely proud of you. So I don't want to be too long in my speech, but I just want to point to a few Croatian Canadians who have contributed to the life of this wonderful country. There have been many examples of achievements of my compatriots who started coming here in the 90s and the beginning of the 20th century. For instance, Mario Puretić, whom I mentioned last night, the inventor of the mechanized winch called the Puretić power block, used to haul nets on fishing vessels. And for his merits, he got a lot of awards. But what's important is that since 1972, a picture of a fishing boat with his power block has been featured on the Canadian $5 bill. Of course, Croatians played a major role in the development of the fishing industry in Canada, where they held as much as 40% of the total share. Can you believe that? 40%. So today, of course, the new generations have got different ways, and they chose different occupations from their parents, but they're still contributing to the life and the prosperity of this wonderful country. They were scientists and university professors, neuropsychologist, Professor Mladen Vranić, diabetologist, Professor Igor Štadljar, biochemist, Dr. Ante Klačen, physician, Professor Branko Ladani, geologist and sociologist, Anthony Rasporić, and many, many others left their mark. And of course, we're especially proud of the athletes, as well as Croatia is very much known for that. And I was so grateful to have met and to have known Senator Frank Mahovlić during my time as diplomat at the Croatian embassy. And of course, we have Joe Shakic and successful businessmen such as Viktor Dodik, president of the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, and many, many others. This is just a small example of how much the Croatian community has contributed to the development of the Canadian society and have become a bridge of cooperation between our countries. I guess, you know, Justin, what a magnificent country you have, but also what wonderful, wonderful people you have here. Croatia and Canada today have strong ties. Justin has told you about hours and hours that we spent together in NATO and other meetings, talking to each other, exchanging information, and other stuff as well that we will talk about later. In terms of being friends and allies. And I will just repeat what I said last night at the end of my remarks at the state dinner at the Right Honorable Governor General's residence. When I talk about our relationship, I mentioned that in life and in politics, people are what matters. Your friends are those who will pick you up when you fall. And the same goes for nations. Throughout your life and throughout the life of our nations, it's alliances, it's the values that you mentioned that matter. And I do hope and I do believe, Justin and my fellow Croatians and my dear Canadian friends, that Croatia and Canada are nourishing exactly that kind of friendship. And if I had a glass of something that was more substantial than water, I would raise it not only to the friendship of Canada and Croatia and our peoples, but I would say, and I will say that out loud, God